Welcome everybody to another exciting class of the Comic Book University. I'm your host, Professor Bill. Let's get started. We're going to be doing Power Man, that is Luke Cage. Guys, I don't have a high-collared yellow t-shirt and I don't have a silver tiara, but what I do have is a black bandana and a $3 chain prop that I got from a dollar store. And that's going to have to be the best that I can do for the costume, along with an Autobot shirt, because hey, he's built like steel, right? Guys, this character is traced back to his origins in his very first issue of Luke Cage, Hero for Hire. That's in June 1972. Now, I want you to think about what I just said here. Luke Cage, number one. Guys, Luke Cage was the very first African-American character to get his own title series where his name is the front line. Falcon came out before him, and it was Captain America and Falcon. Falcon didn't have top billing, and he was African-American. And then you've got the purely African character, T'Challa, the Black Panther, and he had his own top billing series later on, and he was the first African character. The fact of the matter, he was never meant to be as a parody character. He was taken very seriously from the very get-go, and he was a beloved character. Nicholas Coppola, the nephew of Francis Ford Coppola, you know, the guy, he directed a couple of movies called The Godfather, and he directed a bunch of other movies that were legendary. Also, one of the best directors out there, like just shy of Scorsese level, right? And his nephew, Nicholas Coppola, decided that he wanted to take a name differently than his uncle, so that the idea of nepotism would never really come into play, you know? And he was a huge comic book buff, so he took the name of one of his favorite characters, Cage. Nicolas Cage. Yeah, guys, that's where Nick Cage got that name from. Okay, so on to the story. We're going to start off with Carl Lucas. That's Power Man's name. That's Luke Cage's real name, Carl Lucas. And he's in prison, Seagate prison specifically. It's nicknamed Little Alcatraz because no one has ever escaped from it. Even Alcatraz had one escapee. Plus there's that movie The Rock with Sean Connery and, oh my God, Nick Cage. Funny how that all ties together. So Carl Lucas and Willis Stryker are two best friends, and they grew up together in the streets of Harlem, and they were gang members, and they were just going around doing their gang banging thing, and they were robbing and stealing and hustling and thieving and conning, and basically they're just kind of bad guys. And the crimes kept on getting worse, and they kept doing more and more bad things. Well, eventually Carl decided to slow down because he realized that he just can't be stealing and hurting and harming and running and all these crazy things that you do in that kind of a life. And he was a guy who was really good. He was trustworthy, he was dependable, he was great with his fists. And then you have Willis Stryker. Now, Willis was good with a knife, and Willis didn't want to slow down. Willis just wanted to keep doing what he was doing and keep on evolving in the de-evolutionary way of looking at things. He wanted to get more entrenched in the crime. Now, there's a group called the Syndicate who was going around, and they were taking over. And this is around the time that Carl stopped hanging out so much with Willis because, you know, just things. He got a nice office job, he was doing some work, he was making something out of himself. Meanwhile, Willis got himself involved in the numbers games and racketeering and all sorts of things like that. And he was moving in on the Syndicate's properties, quote unquote. Enter Reva Connors. Of course, here comes the woman that's going to wind up fully dividing these two. It makes for good storytelling. What are you going to do? Well, she works with Carl, and Carl's been slowly trying to, you know, how you doing? Well, Willis doesn't move quite that slow, and he was going straight for it, and he had the money to back up, you know, his lifestyle, and he was taking Reva out, and she was very much interested until she started to realize that he wasn't really such a great guy. Actually wound up getting caught up in a restaurant this one time while some Syndicate members come in, and they're waiting for him out back, and they beat the living snot out of him. She barely gets away, and she happens to run into Carl Lucas. Lucas runs a couple of blocks to go catch up, and they're still beating the heck out of his old buddy Willis, and he's not going to have any of that, so he beats the snot out of them in return. Well, they bring Willis to the hospital, and he's recovering all right. He almost lost an eye and just not looking good. But Riva is breaking up with him because she realizes that he's in this kind of life, and that's just simply not what she wants out of life. So, and of course, Willis blames Carl. So, yeah, that's the end of their friendship. And he vows revenge, and he gets revenge because as Riva and Carl have gotten a lot closer, a whole lot more than just regular old chummy, well, Willis decides to steal some heroin from the syndicate and bring it over and plant it in Carl's home, and then tips off the police, and Carl winds up getting fingered and goes to jail. Now, when he gets to jail, he's really bitter. He's bitter about a lot of stuff because, he's done a lot of bad things in his life, and while he never necessarily atoned for them, he did kind of, become at peace with them for the most part, and he's moved on. He's trying to do better with his life, and now he gets framed for something he didn't even do. So Riva herself actually winds up getting killed because the syndicate comes after Willis, figuring that he's the one who stole the heroin in the first place, starts shooting at him in the highway, and Riva is actually in the way. She's in the passenger seat. The reason why she was there is because Willis suggested that if she hangs out with him, maybe he'd be able to get Carl out of prison. It's a cheap, horrible stunt to try and hook back up with her. Is what it is. So she gets shot and she gets killed. Carl finds out about this. He's not happy. He's devastated by this because basically this is the woman that he thought he was going to settle down with. So he's not getting along with any of the other prisoners. He's not getting along with any of the guards. One officer takes a particular disliking to him, and that's Officer Quirt. Now, Quirt's particular level of buttheadery seems to go to the nth degree, and he tries to bully Lucas around because he sees him as a weak link in the sense that he doesn't have any friends anywhere. And now a Captain Rackham is taking particular interest in Luke Cage also because he sees what's going on. He sees that he's not friends with anybody, but certain people still look up to him, and he's in the know in what's going on. Rackham finds out that there's going to be some kind of a prison protest or a strike or a demonstration, something to that effect, and he wants some information. And he tries to get Lucas to snitch. Well, Carl isn't having any of that stuff, so he tells him to pretty much blow it out his ear hole. Well, Carl is no stranger to solitary confinement, and he gets thrown back in there now, but he's not alone. In fact, he's getting the beating of his life right now, particularly by Officer Quirt. As fortune would have it, the new warden shows up, Warden Stewart, and he's going to try and do better and make changes, drastic changes. And he happens to come walking in and hears the whole cell block is able to hear the beatings that Quirt is delivering to Carl. So he walks in and sees the actual deed being done. Well, Quirt's fired. However, he doesn't get fired for another 10 minutes. He gets to stay in the room, the solitary confinement, with Carl for 10 minutes while the doors close and all the other officers are to kind of move away and let it be. I don't think that this is how life would really happen, but oh man, wouldn't that just be great? Really? Loves it. So anyways, he gets a beating and he goes on his way. Now, Rackham is discovered to have been involved in this, and he was a captain, and he gets kind of booted down to where Quirt was. He's just a regular old guy on the floor doing shifts. Now, Rackham could just look at it as, wow, I got a chance to, not be fired and have my entire career thrown away, and he only has to be good for 1 week, and then he can go back to being a captain. But no, he's still got to be a butthead. So, buttheads will be buttheads. Enter Dr. Burstein. Now, Dr. Burstein has an origin that kind of is all over the place, but when it's all put together, his grandfather worked on a form of the original super soldier serum back in Germany, and they wanted to replicate that to the best of their ability. Now, they knew that they weren't going to quite get a Steve Rogers, Captain America-esque sort of deal, but, they were hoping eventually. And they needed live subjects, volunteers. So since Carl is essentially the epitome of physical health, he says, listen, this should prevent all diseases from ever coming near you, and it might even retard your aging, so you never have to worry about getting old, or at least not anytime soon. The offer is this for a chance at parole. Carl kind of goes back and forth on it, and eventually he comes to the decision that, yeah, he's going to go for it. And he goes in, and there's an electrobiochemical system for stimulating human cell regeneration. Now, sounds like a mouthful, but at the end of the day, it's supposed to give you a form of a healing factor. Well, all of this is on the up and up. He got a grant from Stark Enterprises, Stark Industries, in order to build this machine and the chemicals involved and heat it up through electricity. Well, Carl strips down. He's injected with a few diseases one can imagine, because he wasn't sick and had to see if it would actually work. And he was just supposed to go in for a couple of minutes in this electrically heated liquid made of some unknown substances. And he was just supposed to kind of build up a tolerance for the environment. Well, he goes in there, and the doctor goes off to check several of the other systems that are all around. It's a huge complex. And Rackham comes in. Oh, yeah. He lets Carl know right away, I'm going to get you back now. And he just takes a random dial and cranks it up to 10. Well, Carl is almost exploding in pain down there. And eventually he's able to break out of the machine by just smashing the heck out of it. The doctor comes back and tries to hold off Rackham. Rackham's not hearing, and even pulls out his pistol, and he's about to shoot Carl because, hey, prisoner's trying to escape. Well, Carl is a little faster, and he slaps the gun out of his hand and then actually, pimp slaps Rackham. He didn't realize his own strength, and he almost kills Rackham. Doesn't die. He actually winds up coming back many issues later, but spoilers. But he is out, and he's hurt bad, really bad. So Carl is sitting there thinking, oh man, all of this, everything that I'm going through, and I'm going to wind up having to serve extra sentence for killing this butthead of a cop. I already had 15 years, an extra 3 was added on because of violence. I'm going to be in here for the rest of my life. Can you imagine if he did get the accelerated aging and they just wound up tacking on even more time? I mean, that would be horrible. What a curse, right? So when push comes to shove, he just got upset and he just smacked on the wall a little bit. Now, he didn't expect it was going to happen, but a good chunk of that wall in this basement came undone. So he's like, what? And he starts tapping on the wall some more and finally starts smashing the wall. The wall comes apart, big hole, and he's able to jump through. And he starts trying to make his escape. And he starts running. He gets to the very edge of the island, and alarms are blaring, whistles are blowing, and cops are coming, and they see him, and he picks up a rock, and the cops think it's a gun. Have we ever heard this story before? And he gets shot up, and he falls down into the water. Now, the cool thing is, the bullets don't enter his body. His skin is now super tough. But here's the thing to understand about this. Great strength. His skin is essentially unbreakable. Now, not really at first. It's almost. But as the hero evolves, so does his strength increase. So does his invulnerability increase. But at the end of the day, it's only his epidermis that's unbreakable. His organs, while much tougher, much more dense than they were before, it was that quick rah of Rackham turning the dial all the way up. That, just the outside, hey, you're hooked up, but everything else, not quite. So his bones could still technically break, though not as easily. They could still break, but his skin, for the most part, won't. We'll get into the powers later. But the idea is that he gets shot up, he's bruised, but he's okay. Now, as he's leaving, his shirt gets all torn up and he leaves it, and he starts trying to hide from these people several yards away. The police look down, they don't see him. There's no way he could be underwater that long. They actually go down there and they find the shirt riddled with bullets, and they just say, you know what? Clearly, he was taken out to sea. We'll find him one of these days, but this guy is dead. Like, we killed this guy. Wow. So, he was reported dead. Sounds like a whole new life for Mr. Carl Lucas. So he finds a boat and he's able to get his way back to mainland, and he goes to New York, and he's got to keep on the low because he can't just use his name and his social security number to get around and do what he needs to do. So he's got to take odd jobs that don't really ask too many questions, and he's having a hard time getting any money doing this, but he's making do. Now, Carl is doing the best he can, quite literally living day to day, wondering where his next meal is going to come from. And he's walking along, and this guy comes charging out of a diner. He just robbed the place, and he takes a shot at Carl, hits him, and Carl just boop, knocks the guy out. Police are able to come and all that stuff a little bit later, but the owner of the diner is so grateful because guy just stole the whole day's haul. The owner says, listen, I hope you won't be offended if I try and offer you a cash reward. And of course, hey, he could use it. But more than that, Carl is a very entrepreneuring sort. He says, you know what? I can be a superhero. I mean, I am super. Why not be a superhero? But I can make some money on it. And what's the problem with that? There's no problem. People hire private detectives all the time. People hire private security. So I have a talent that, hey, and yeah, I could be like Captain America and Spider-Man and give my talents out freely. But what's the problem with just actually being a hero for hire? There really isn't any problem with that. Instead of hoping there's going to be a hero around, you can actually go out and rent a hero for a job or for a period of time, whatever. I don't see anything ethically wrong with that whatsoever. I don't. So he takes that money that he just got and he goes off and he visits a costume store. Now he starts asking around, I need to get a costume. I don't really have too much money. I can't spend all my money in one place. So, what can you do for me? And this is great. This is great. This is a 1972 comic. And I want you guys to really put yourself there at the time. The costume owner holds up a pair of red long johns with a big fat lightning bolt on it. Not like the Flash, but like Captain Marvel, Shazam. And he says, yeah, how about these? They come really cheap. Turns out the hero who used to wear them was involved in a lawsuit that he lost. And if you know the history of Captain Marvel, Shazam, Billy Batson, he was great. And then DC Comics sued him because the character, they sued Wiz Comics, Fawcett Comics, because he was a little bit too much like Superman and lost too many times, won once, and they just kind of said, you know what, here, blah, take it, we're done. So they got the character, and it was a really great little nod to the fact that here is this great hero and he lost a lawsuit. So here, you want the costume? To me, I was like, that was just funny. Yeah, fear not, we're going to do Captain Marvel Shazam one of these days. Just give me some time, all right? I'm one guy. So what he does find is a magician's chest. And the guy's like, oh yeah, that was an escape artist. And his act wasn't really that great. So here's all of his stuff. He sold it for, almost nothing. So I can sell it to you for a steal. Well, he finds a nice big plumed yellow shirt with the collar that goes up high and the chest wide open, just like a magician would wear. And he finds in it an escape artist's chain. And he wears that as a belt, gets it cut, and pretty much there's his costume. So now he needs to make business cards. Hey man, you gotta represent. You gotta. So he goes to get the business cards made, and they say, what do you want the name on it to be? And he says, Carl, I've really got to make a completely different identity here. And Carl Lucas is officially dead. So how about we keep a little bit of the old Luke, Carl Lucas, let's keep Luke. But such a huge part of my life was living in a cage in Seagate Prison. So, Luke Cage, remind me of where I came from and where I'm never going again. So he gets these business cards, and now he's going out and he's finding out more and more day by day that Willis Stryker, his old partner in crime, is now a pretty big dude, and he's in big with the syndicate. Yeah, somehow they meshed and became friends and buds, and he's working for them now. And he's also taken on the name Diamondback, and he's wearing a snakeskin suit that's just pimp. Like, wow. If he could have gotten the big oversized fedora with the feather in it, the plume, it's the only way this could have been any better. He would have kind of looked like a snaky Jarlaxle. Nice. You know, I'm going to have to do a couple Dungeons & Dragons characters one of these days too, because they're superheroes. So he really starts working in on the business there, and he stops all of the syndicate's actions in Harlem, so it's going to directly affect Diamondback, Willis. And he starts handing out his business cards every time also, so it's going to get back to him. Now, a hit gets put out on him. It's not going to work because, you know, he's bulletproof. Now, he goes and he has to get an office because his little message system just isn't working anymore. And it's above a old movie theater that just does westerns now because, well, it's the cheapest to rent. And he's on the 3rd floor. And anyway, so he also goes and around town looking everywhere and finds a clinic. And there are 2 doctors there. Dr. Claire Temple, yes, she's the night nurse, but she's not a nurse. She's a doctor. And we find Carl Burstein. Wow, nobody saw that coming. Yeah, Carl decided to give up what he was doing before. Too many people had gotten hurt, and he really felt bad about Carl, so he decides to try and make good out of his life. And he recognizes Luke immediately, but he doesn't say anything. And there's a little back and forth, like, should he tell the police? And let's try and, you know, do this all by the law because I believe in the system. And Luke Cage doesn't believe in the system, and let's be realistic, he'd have gone back into the system if, you know, just saying. And Dr. Burstein does realize that after a while. He says, you know what, regardless of what I believe in, you're the one who would go back to prison. You're the one whose life would be over, and you've done everything that I asked you to do. So, yeah, let's try and keep the buttheadery to a low. And he just provides a service with Dr. Temple to the community, and Carl does his thing with the community, and we're good. Well, people start to realize what's going on there, and he really starts to develop some crushing feelings for Dr. Temple, and Dr. Temple gets kidnapped. Claire gets kidnapped. Well, of course, Mr. Cage is not going to handle this news well, so he goes right after where Diamondback is, Willis Stryker, and he charges in, and a car comes after him and hits him, and he's laying there, and people come closer, and he starts breaking legs and body parts. No, really, he jacks people up bad, and he gets his shot up thing and goes after Willis. Claire gets set free, she runs off, and he chases Diamondback all the way to the roof. Now, Diamondback somehow met a boy genius guy who is forced to make great gadgets into knives, because that's what, as I said in the beginning of the conversation about Willis Stryker, Diamondback is good with knives. So he makes a knife that when it strikes will release some kind of gas. He makes another knife that will release sonics. It'll emit sonic waves that'll make your brain into mush. And a knife that will explode when the tip of it hits. Well, none of those things work. They do. The sonic emitter goes near Cage and he just smashes the handle. So, yeah, good job with that. Waiting to throw the knife once Cage opens the door, but he doesn't open the door. He smashes through the door, so the knife misses by a long shot, and he never has to worry about breathing any of that nonsense in. And yes, he would have been hurt bad if he would breathe that stuff in. The exploding one is more of a question. I've seen not too later in the comics where he actually took a grenade, not directly, but indirectly, like within 5 feet. And 5 feet is the kill zone of a 5-foot kill radius for an M66 defensive. Yeah, I was in the military. And he survived, and literally just clothes were messed up, but he himself, not even a scratch on him. So yeah, I think he would have been okay with the exploding knife. I mean... Anyway, Willis never gets to actually throw the knife at Carl. He keeps backing up and trying to get that perfect shot, and he winds up stepping on a skylight and falls right through. And he's like, oh, I only fell a very short distance. I'm going to get up, I'm going to run, and nobody's going to be able to follow me. And then the knife falls, and tip first right next to him, and boom, bye-bye Diamondback. Well, the police come because Claire brought them, and she and Dr. Burstein vouch for Luke, and everything's clear and he's okay, and he now has a brand new identity. He's a solid pillar of the community, and yeah, only good things happen from this point on if you consider that he's got to be a hero and always put his life in danger. Anyway, guys, briefly, let's talk about his powers. His main power, obviously, as everybody I believe should know, he's got unbreakable skin. You can't lacerate his skin. Again, this only refers to the epidermis. So while his muscles are much denser than a normal human's would be, he is still human under all that stuff. He can bleed internally. He can have his bones snapped or shattered. He can get hurt inside. He can get electrified. He can get poisoned. He can ingest chemicals and be hurt. Lots of things could happen to him, but his epidermis itself is not able to be cut. He has had it cut before by very overpowered, high-powered lasers, and in combination with adamantium surgical tools. So yes, if there is that question, Wolverine with the unbreakable bones and the adamantium claws that can cut through anything, and here's Luke Cage with the unbreakable skin, who's going to win? The only question would be, can Wolverine get in a shot that he's able to put his full strength into it? Because if the answer is yes, then the result is yes. But if Luke, who by himself is a fantastic street fighter, if he's able to deflect blows and things like that, deflect claw swipes, I don't think that Wolverine would even get a scratch on, because he wouldn't be able to pull the full weight of his body, of his shoulder and hip into any of those blows to get him. So if Luke were to stand still, yeah, Wolverine could absolutely impale the guy in his claws. No problems, really. No issues. But Luke's not going to stand still. He is strong. He's unbelievably strong. Now, realistically, when he started off, he was about the 5-ton range, and this increased. Right about now, he is probably maybe stronger than Spider-Man, maybe around that Ghost Rider range of strength. So, yeah, strong enough that he was able to punch the ground and cause small seismic activities, but yeah, strength isn't his biggest thing. However, he has been shown getting a lot stronger. He has been shown being a lot stronger than anybody expected him to be. He might be in the class 50 range, which would be higher than Spider-Man, basically around Rogue level or Miss Marvel level of strength. Rogue when she had the Miss Marvel level abilities, not before. So anyways, 20 tons, 25 tons, yes, probably easily. 50 tons, maybe. Now, again, he can be hurt, especially internally. So, again, the original intent of that electrochemical treatment was that he'd be able to heal faster than a human, and he heals approximately 3 times faster than your average human. So around the Spider-Man level of healing, around the Hawkman level of healing, when nth metal is present. He is not a healing factor qualifier. Captain America will heal faster than Wolverine. Captain America will heal faster than Luke Cage, but Luke does heal very fast. Scar tissue can form within a day. Anyways, guys, that's Luke Cage in a nutshell. And I'm going to do a couple of stories that Luke Cage did and really get to see what he was all about. Stay tuned for those. And in the meantime, guys, you've earned it. Class dismissed.